In the town of Alessandria there is a statue. It's the statue dedicated to a peasant who saved the town from a long, horrible siege from an enemy hoping to starve out the people within its walled citadel. So a quick-witted peasant named Galeaudo fed his cow with the last grain remaining within the city, then took it outside the city walls until he reached the enemy encampment. Here he was captured, and his cow cut open to be cooked. When the guards found the cow's stomach filled with grain, Gagliardo was asked the reason to waste such a rich meal. He answered that he was forced to feed his cow with grain because there was so much of it, and no room to place it within the city. The ruler, fearing that the siege would last far too long, left Alessandria. Cesare Tallone grew up in the town of such a history, and while the story may be legend or not, it is of such folklore that pictures are made and the imagination is fueled. Cesare Tallone was born at Savona in 1853 and has devoted himself almost entirely to subjects of pastoral genre, illustrating the costumes, the facial types, and the manners and customs of the people among whom his early life experienced. After pursuing a course of studies at the Brera Academy in 1872, he made a very successful debut in 1879. He won the triennial shared schools of painting competition at the Brera Exhibition in 1879, with a historical subject and a portrait. Some members of the local bourgeoisie commissioned the first portraits from him and persuaded the city council to finance his studies. Thanks to this financial aid, Tallone was able to enroll in the academy, studying until 1880. His talent was obvious from his very first works and was recognized by Francesco Hayez, who allowed him the use of his personal studio near the academy and who was an active participant in the lively artistic cultural milieu in Milan and a member of the Familia Artistica since its foundation by Vespasiano Bignami. In his professional career following atelier studies, the artist begins to make his mark. Tallone often spent time in Rome with compatriot artists Antonio Mancini and Francesco Paolo Michetti. Both Mancini and Michetti would be major factors in the naturalist movement in Italy, to where their unusual but brilliant painterly approach and experiments in pictorial expression would be the envy of many artists. In fact, John Singer Sargent would declare Mancini to be among the finest painters of the brush, describing him as the best living painter. One can see the energetic tight group of these painters could feed off each other's independent spirit into the very essence of painting. Tallone no doubt could thrive in such a creative atmosphere, and by 1885, at 32 years old, he was appointed instructor of painting at the Carrara Academy in Bergamo, a position which he also held at the Brera School from 1899. Tallone often painted together with his students, as was widely known, especially by his favorite pupil, Pelizza da Volpedo, who wrote down Tallone's every word during the lessons, having not been satisfied with his achieved preparation from ateliers at Rome. And later in Florence he went to Bergamo. There, at the Accademia Carrara, he attended private courses of Tallone. The expressive power, the vitality of the figure, and the energy of the masses declare the indisputable supremacy of Tallone in the life-size portrait. Implemented in sight-size figurative painting and the nude, Tallone also wanted to show his students, in his special school set up like a Renaissance workshop, how to tackle the portrait, exclaiming, "One had to know how to reproduce the figure in its original dimensions." The strength of drawing arises from this concept, derived from his studies of the ancient masters. Those who know how to draw large can be equally confident in smaller dimensions, while the opposite is not possible. Giuseppe Pelizza da Volpedo, his private pupil at Carrara, will say of Tallone, "Of the rules of good drawing and of masculine painting he was the only one among my teachers." Continuing to exhibit, and as a renowned, well-established portrait painter, the artist moved equally well in the intellectual, bourgeois, and aristocratic circles, and by 1908 an entire room was devoted to his works at the Esposizione Internazionale d'Arte di Venezia the same year. We welcome such an idea today, it might be added, Now turning to the painter's work, we have the painting titled The Friar Cook. This splendid painting was never exhibited during the artist's lifetime. It was instead admired in the posthumous exhibition of his work at the Real Accademia di Brera in 1921, and published in the small catalogue of 1922. A slightly expanded and updated version was also reproduced in a monograph of the 1945 edition. The idea that Mr. Confalonieri, his dear friend, had commissioned such a portrait has always been intriguing, since the painter seldom liked third-party themes as suggested commissions. Tallone was highly coveted as a portrait painter both in Bergamo and in Milan. The requests were so many that the painter often had to refuse. He was not a genre painter per se, nor did he ever have intermediary art dealers. The Friar Cook is an example of his superb mastery here. The portrait recalls the great early masters of Flemish painting, which the whole complexion of the figure and face of the ruddy friar suggests, along with the extraordinary still life, which could be better called living nature. Now we turn to the portrait of the painter's sister, Giuseppina Tallone, in period costume from Chiara. Giuseppina Natalina Tallone was 2 years older than her brother Cesare, born in Savona on Christmas Day in 1855. Portrayed by him twice in the guise of a Chiara, which is named after a mysterious land somewhere between Rome and Lanola. A vibrant portrait of rich colouring and thoughtfully relaxed gesture. One can almost hear the conversation between the artist and sister. Then we have the portrait of fellow painter Cesare Maironi of 1886. It depicts Maironi, who was also a sculptor, and among whose works are frescoes in the Church of the Graces, in the room of the ancient municipal council at Rome. The imposing and proud figure of the elderly painter from Bergamo seems to indicate Tallone's character with empathy. The painting is straightforward, and painted as a living still life, so to speak, in the arrangement seated by a wall, almost ready to leap from the chair. Now, moving on to another canvas, with a bit of a mystery, there is suggested a strong resemblance in this portrait to Francesco Paolo Michetti, whose acquaintance in Rome with Tallone between 1882 and 1883 fits the dating of the painting. However, it was not confirmed by the heirs of Michetti as of him, so it remains an unknown portrait of a man with glasses, albeit very cleverly painted with rich texture and colourful paint handling. He had many other opportunities to visit with his friend Michetti, as Tallone was quite at home in Rome, with many commissioned portraits after the success of the exhibitions between 1883 and 85, and for subsequent periods, interspersed with teaching at Carrara, whose professorship he had won in 85. But another significant reason for frequenting the capital was his new girlfriend Eleonora Tango, who he would marry in 1888 in Rome. In another painting, we have a portrait of the artist's daughter Irene, a lovely work of art with all the emotion and care for the subject that one can portray. The youth and innocence shine through with the casual stance, with her arm resting on a decorative drape, something an artist might have the model do for bracing his daughter as she poses for papa. We also want to mention another student that little is known about, pictured here, Emma Nessie, another private pupil. There doesn't seem to be anything further concerning her or her work. The all-important relationships between artists and their teachers and the years of study can be demonstrated in the artist's own words, as we know that Francesco Hayez lent his own studio at the Academy to the young painter for the execution of the enormous painting titled A Victory of Christianity in the Times of Alaric, that he would undertake at the end of his studies. Measuring some 10 by 17 feet, it is remembered in a letter as follows: "Since the moment I began my great historical painting now in Rome, I had then completed my studies in the Academy, where afterward, in the premises of the same, thanks to the kind favour granted to me by the late Professor Hayez, I began to paint the painting, spending about 3 years on it all together with several other works. Unfortunately, it was destroyed by bombing in 1943. But the early confidence shown for his talent and the artist's high regard for his teacher remained dear to him. Carlo Ferrari was an artist who was painted in a more dramatic and itinerant type of portrait. Its appeal is that of a bohemian with dramatic soft lighting flowing over the features to reveal his identity. Not unlike Rembrandt's self-portraits that have a good deal of mystery over the sitter's look and expression. In another portrait is Giovanni Donna Seduta of 1884. When Tallone was just 28 years old, the sitter is painted in a more polished fashion, with the features rendered very carefully and adorned with a lavish white neck scarf that bellows out to give modest action to the pose that might otherwise be a bit more matter-of-fact and subdued. In the following are portraits that he painted, some of whom are family, and others can be classified as grand manner pictures for the artistic-minded audience, that have more flair and an air of mystery that appeals to the trained eye, decidedly different and designed to demonstrate certain drawing skills with flair and freedom in the arabesque, if you will. In looking over the work of the Italian masters of the 19th century as we have examined in this presentation, we find Signore Tallone as a most interesting character. His long devotion to portraiture and dedication to teaching have enriched the lives of art lovers everywhere. Along with his compatriots of the school and style of homegrown naturalism, the newer generations can see the heights they have reached. Nothing replaces nature, and to be able to stand before a canvas and fill it with the treasures the eye sees is without question a world of wonder and excitement. Finally, we hope you have enjoyed this brief look into the art of Cesare Tallone. It is hoped better reproductions of his work will emerge for all the world to enjoy. With that, we look forward to reviewing many more great talents of painting in future presentations, and thank you to our subscribers. Please remember to leave a like, as it helps the channel to grow. So until next time, bye for now.